The evening rush at Marcello's was in full swing when the man in the navy suit walked in carrying a little girl who looked to be about 5 years old. Emma Hayes noticed them immediately, not because they were dressed more formally than most of her customers at this neighborhood Italian restaurant, but because of the way the man held his daughter. There was something protective and gentle in the gesture, and something uncertain in his face as he scanned the dining room. Emma was wiping down the bar area, her blonde ponytail swinging as she worked. She wore the restaurant's standard uniform, a light blue button-down shirt and a beige apron, both neat despite the dinner rush that had kept her moving for the past 3 hours. At 26, she'd been waitressing at Marcello's for 4 years, working her way through community college classes whenever her schedule allowed. "Emma!" called Tony, the host, gesturing toward the new arrivals. "Can you take table 7? Emma grabbed 2 menus and headed over, her professional smile in place. As she got closer, she noticed more details. The man was probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and striking features that might have seemed cold if not for the warmth in his eyes when he looked at his daughter. The little girl had blonde hair similar to Emma's own shade, pulled back with a pink clip, and she wore a pretty pink dress that looked special, not everyday wear. "Good evening," Emma said as she reached them. "Welcome to Marcello's. Just the 2 of you tonight?" "Yes," the man said, his voice pleasant but carrying an edge of tension. "A table for 2, please." Emma led them to table 7, a cozy spot near the window with a view of the street. She set down the menus and pulled out a booster seat for the little girl before the man could ask. "Thank you," he said, helping his daughter settle into her seat. "This is perfect. My name's Emma, and I'll be taking care of you tonight," she said, directing a warm smile at the little girl. "What's your name, sweetie?" "Sophia," the girl said shyly, then added with more confidence, "But everyone calls me Sophie." "Sophie is a beautiful name," Emma said genuinely. "Can I get you both started with something to drink?" The man ordered water and milk for Sophie, and Emma headed to the kitchen. She tried to shake off the odd feeling she'd gotten from them. There was something about the way the man kept glancing around nervously, and the way Sophie seemed unusually well-behaved, sitting very still and proper as if she'd been given special instructions. When Emma returned with their drinks, she found the man leaning close to Sophie, speaking to her in a low voice. They both straightened as Emma approached, and she noticed Sophie's eyes were a bit wider than before, almost anxious. "Are you ready to order, or do you need a few more minutes?" Emma asked. "Actually," the man said, and then paused. He looked at Emma with an expression that was hard to read. Desperate, maybe, embarrassed. "Actually, could I speak with you for just a moment? Privately?" Emma felt a flicker of concern. "Is there a problem with the table?" "No, nothing like that. It's complicated. Please, just a moment of your time. Sophie will be fine here for just a minute, won't you, sweetheart?" Sophie nodded solemnly, and Emma found herself following the man a few steps away from the table, close enough to keep an eye on Sophie but out of her hearing range. "I know this is going to sound strange," the man began, keeping his voice low, "but I need to ask you for a favor. It's important, and I'll compensate you for your time, whatever you think is fair." Emma's guard went up immediately. "Sir, I'm not sure what you're suggesting, but—" "No, please, hear me out," he said quickly, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. This isn't anything inappropriate. I just need you to pretend to be Sophie's mother, just for this evening, just for dinner." Emma stared at him. "Excuse me?" The man took a breath, and Emma could see he was genuinely struggling. "My name is Alexander Grant. Sophie is my daughter. Her mother died 2 years ago, and it's just been the 2 of us since then. Tonight is Sophie's 5th birthday, and this morning at preschool, she told all her friends that her mom was going to take her out for a special birthday dinner." His voice cracked slightly. "The teacher called me concerned because she knows about my wife. And when I asked Sophie about it, she said she just wanted one birthday, where she could pretend she had a mom like all her friends do." Emma felt her throat tighten, but she kept her professional composure. "Mr. Grant, I'm so sorry for your loss, but I can't just—" "I know it's bizarre," Alexander continued urgently. "I know I'm asking something completely inappropriate, but when I picked Sophie up today and asked her what she wanted for her birthday, she looked at me with those big eyes, and asked if we could go to a restaurant and if a lady could pretend to be her mom, just for dinner so she could see what it would feel like. She said she'd be really good and wouldn't ask for it again. Emma glanced back at Sophie, who was sitting perfectly still at the table. Her small hands folded in front of her, looking like she was trying very hard to be the good girl she'd promised to be. Emma's heart cracked a little. "Mr. Grant, Alexander, please, and I'll pay you $500 for 2 hours of your time. You don't have to do anything elaborate. Just sit with us, maybe help her order, talk to her like a mother would. That's all she's asking for. One meal where she can pretend." His eyes were bright with unshed tears now. "I'd do anything for my daughter, miss. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name." "Hayes," Emma said automatically. "Emma Hayes." She looked from Alexander to Sophie and back again, her mind racing. This was without question the strangest request she'd ever received at work. But there was something about the raw honesty in Alexander's face. The desperation of a father trying to give his daughter something he couldn't provide on his own. "Let me talk to my manager," Emma said finally. "I'm not promising anything, but let me see if I can take a break." 5 minutes later, Emma had explained a simplified version of the situation to Marco, the night manager, telling him a regular customer needed help with his daughter and had requested Emma specifically. Marco was understanding, gave her a 2-hour window, and told her to go out the back and come in through the front like a regular customer. Emma ducked into the restroom, took off her apron, and let down her hair from its ponytail. She looked at herself in the mirror, wondering what she was doing. If this was crazy or kind or both, then she thought of Sophie sitting at that table. A 5-year-old girl who just wanted one evening to feel what she was missing. And Emma knew she couldn't say no. She walked back into the restaurant through the front door and made her way to table 7. Alexander saw her coming and stood immediately, relief flooding his face. Sophie turned in her seat, and when she saw Emma, her eyes went wide with something that looked like hope and fear mixed together. "Hi, sweetheart," Emma said softly, sliding into the seat beside Sophie. "I'm so sorry I'm late. The traffic was terrible." For a moment, Sophie just stared at her. Then, very quietly, she said, "Hi, Mommy." The word hung in the air, and Emma felt tears prick at her own eyes. She reached over and tucked a strand of Sophie's, blonde hair behind her ear in a gesture that felt surprisingly natural. "Happy birthday, Sophie," Emma said. "I heard someone special is turning 5 today." Sophie nodded, still looking like she couldn't quite believe this was happening. "It's me. I'm 5. "Well, that calls for a celebration," Emma said, picking up the menu. "What do you think you'd like to eat?" What followed was one of the most surreal and beautiful evenings of Emma's life. She and Alexander fell into an easy rhythm, behaving like two parents at dinner with their daughter. They helped Sophie decide on spaghetti and meatballs, her favorite. They talked about her preschool, her friends, the art project she was working on. Emma asked questions and listened to Sophie's animated responses about her teacher and her stuffed rabbit at home, and the bird she'd seen on the playground. Alexander joined in, but mostly he watched them, and Emma could see the mix of gratitude and sadness in his eyes. She understood that he was giving his daughter a gift, but he was also being reminded of everything they'd lost. "Mommy," Sophie said at one point, the word still hesitant on her lips. "Do you like butterflies?" "I love butterflies," Emma said honestly. "Do you?" "Uh-huh. Daddy says my real mommy loved them too. She painted them sometimes." The table went quiet, and Emma saw Alexander swallow hard. She reached across the table and gently took his hand, a gesture that surprised both of them but felt right in the moment. "I bet she painted beautiful butterflies," Emma said softly. "She did," Alexander said, his voice thick. "She was an amazing artist. Sophie has her talent." They ate dinner, and the conversation flowed more naturally than it had any right to. Emma found herself genuinely enjoying Alexander's company. He was intelligent and clearly devoted to his daughter, and there were moments when his dry sense of humor broke through the sadness, making her laugh. When the waiter brought out a small birthday cake that Alexander had pre-ordered, complete with 5 candles, they sang happy birthday. Sophie's face lit up with pure joy, and when she blew out the candles, Emma asked what she'd wished for. "I can't tell," Sophie said seriously, "or it won't come true." After dinner, they walked outside to where Alexander had parked his car. The evening air was cool and the street was quiet. Sophie held Emma's hand on one side and Alexander's on the other, and for a few steps, they were just a family walking together. At the car, Sophie suddenly turned and hugged Emma around the waist, burying her face in Emma's side. "Thank you," Sophie whispered, "for pretending to be my mommy." Emma crouched down so she was at Sophie's level, not caring that her eyes were filling with tears. "Thank you for letting me be part of your birthday, Sophie. You're a very special girl and your daddy loves you so much." "I know," Sophie said, "but sometimes I just want a mommy too." "I know, sweetheart," Emma said, and she hugged Sophie properly, feeling the little girl's arms wrap around her neck. "I know." When Sophie was buckled into her car seat, Alexander walked back to where Emma stood on the sidewalk. He pulled out his wallet, but Emma held up a hand. "I don't want your money," she said. "Emma, you gave up your work time. It's only fair." "Some things aren't about money," Emma said firmly. This was one of the most meaningful evenings I've had in a long time. I wouldn't feel right taking payment for it." Alexander looked at her for a long moment. "Then at least let me take you to dinner. As myself, not as part of some elaborate pretend scenario. You're clearly a remarkable person, and I'd like to get to know you better." Emma hesitated, aware that this was crossing into complicated territory. But there was something about Alexander, about the evening they'd just shared, that made her want to say yes. "Okay," she said, "but somewhere casual. I spend enough time in fancy restaurants." They exchanged phone numbers, and as Emma walked back toward Marcello's to finish her shift, she turned to wave goodbye. She saw Sophie's small hand pressed against the car window, waving back, and Alexander standing by the driver's door watching her go. What Emma didn't know then was that the evening had changed something fundamental for all three of them. Alexander had asked a stranger for an impossible favor, and that stranger had given them a gift of compassion and grace. Sophie had gotten her wish for one evening, and while it didn't erase the loss of her mother, it gave her a memory of kindness that she'd carry forever. And Emma had discovered that sometimes the most meaningful moments come from the most unexpected requests. Over the following weeks, Alexander and Emma did go to dinner several times, in casual restaurants where they could talk without pretense. They discovered they had more in common than they'd expected. Emma told him about her dreams of becoming a child psychologist, about working her way through school, about growing up without much money but with a lot of love. Alexander told her about his wife, about the grief that still caught him off guard sometimes, about the challenges of being a single father while running an investment firm. Sophie came on their third date, and it was different than that first evening at Marcello's. Emma wasn't pretending to be Sophie's mother. She was just Emma, someone who genuinely enjoyed spending time with this bright, sweet little girl who loved art and stories and asking endless questions about everything. 6 months later, Emma graduated with her associate degree, and Alexander and Sophie were in the audience. 1 year after that first meeting at Marcello's, Alexander proposed, not in a fancy restaurant but in their living room, with Sophie sitting between them on the couch, holding a small box with a ring she'd helped pick out. "Sophie and I have been talking," Alexander said, "and we both agree that we want you to be part of our family. Not pretend, not for one evening, but for real, forever." Emma said yes through tears, and Sophie cheered and launched herself into Emma's arms. At their wedding, which was small and lovely, Sophie was the flower girl. During the reception, when Emma was saying hello to guests, she felt a small tug on her dress. She looked down to see Sophie holding something in her hands. "What is it, sweetheart?" Emma asked. "I made you something," Sophie said, holding up a painting. It was a butterfly, done in bright colors with the enthusiastic imperfection of a child's artwork. "Because you said you love butterflies, and because my first mommy loved them too. So now you both have something the same." Emma knelt down, not caring about her wedding dress, and took the painting carefully. "Sophie, this is beautiful. This is the best wedding present anyone could give me. Are you my real mommy now?" Sophie asked, her voice small and hopeful. "I'm your Emma," Emma said gently, having thought about this conversation many times. "Your first mommy will always be your first mommy, and she'll always love you. But I'm here now, and I love you too, and I'll always be here for you. Is that okay?" Sophie thought about this, then nodded. So I have two mommies. One in heaven and one here. Exactly right, Emma said, pulling Sophie into a hug. Alexander, watching from across the room, felt his heart swell with gratitude. He thought about that evening at Marcello's, about the crazy request he'd made to a waitress because his daughter wanted to pretend for one meal. He'd been prepared to pay money for a service, for someone to act a part. Instead, he'd found someone who'd seen his daughter's pain and had responded with genuine compassion, someone who'd given freely what couldn't be bought, someone who'd taken a strange request and had turned it into a moment of grace that had changed all their lives. Years later, when Sophie was older and asked about how her dad and Emma had met, they told her the whole story. About the birthday dinner, and the unusual request, and the waitress who'd said yes to something most people would have found too strange or difficult. So you asked Emma to pretend to be my mom and then she became my real mom? Sophie asked, trying to understand. Something like that, Alexander said, smiling at Emma across the room. Though I think the truth is, your Emma here has a gift for seeing what people need and finding a way to give it to them. That night, you needed to feel what it was like to have a mom at your birthday dinner. And Emma made that happen. But I got more than one dinner, Sophie said. I got a whole life. We all did, Emma said, coming to sit beside them. Sometimes the things that seem impossible or strange turn out to be exactly what we need. That night changed everything for all of us. Do you think my first mommy would be happy? Sophie asked. That you're here? Emma and Alexander exchanged a look, and Emma pulled Sophie close. I think your first mommy would be grateful that you're loved and happy. That's what every mother wants for their child. And yes, I think she'd be happy that our family found each other. Sophie nodded, satisfied with this answer, and returned to her homework. Alexander reached for Emma's hand, and she squeezed it gently, both of them remembering. That evening, when a desperate father had made an impossible request, and a kind waitress had said yes, it had started with pretending, but it had become the most real thing in all their lives. They'd built a family not on the foundation of what they'd lost, but on the willingness to remain open to unexpected grace, to say yes to connection even when it comes in strange packages, and to believe that love can grow in the most unlikely circumstances. That's what happened at table 7 at Marcello's on a little girl's 5th birthday. A father asked a waitress to pretend, and in pretending, they all found something true, something lasting, something that proved that sometimes the most authentic moments of our lives begin with the courage to reach out and ask for what seems impossible, and the grace to say yes when asked, and that somewhere between pretending and reality, between what we wish for and what we dare to hope for, there's a place where families are made not just by blood or intention, but by showing up, by choosing each other, by turning one evening of kindness into a lifetime of love.